So Christian Bromann will show us how to transition a project from Protractor to WebDriverIO using a code mod. That sounds fun and that sounds useful. So for sure we will get a solid chunk of knowledge. But before sorry. Also, I have to mention a few things before we can continue. So during the presentation of Christian, there will be a poll. I'm not sure what will be there yet, because I think that we will figure that out during the presentation. So I strongly advise you to take part in the poll. I'm curious about the results. And after the presentation, there will be open discussion, as usually. So there are two ways to take part in this open discussion. You can raise your hand, and then I hopefully will see you and ask you to ask a question or share your experience with us. Or you can also write a question directly in the chat. First option is recommended. We want to make this this meetup, interesting. So please don't be afraid. And after the open discussion, then there will be a lucky drone. We have a great prize, a tablet. So I hope that everybody of you will sign up to take part in the draw. Petros will choose the lucky person. Okay, so tablet was, of course, acquired with the help of our dear sponsors. And that's why let's take a moment to hear about these companies. First company is Advantage, and we have with us today Panatoia Potamianu, and she will share with us some information about the Advantage. Let's welcome her, and Panayota, I'm sorry, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Maya. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us with you. It's really nice to see that initiatives like these are still taking place, even when the physical presence is missing. So congrats, keep up the good work. I don't want to take too much of your time, so I will start right away. I am Panayota Potamianu, and I am an HR specialist at Advantage. So let me share my screen. Just a moment. You should all be able to see my presentation now. For those of you who don't know us, we are Advantage, and we've been around since 2002. Advantage is a leading innovator in digital banking and payments technology. We are based in Athens. However, we offer both flexible and remote schemes. And since 2003, we are a business partner of Fiserv, delivering multiple successful projects for financial institutions in the area of core systems, digital banking, and payments. So what we basically do is offering IT consulting services through our partnership with Fiserv, but we are also a software house. We own two different products, Omnia, our digital banking product, and APS, Advantage Payment Systems, which is a centralized payments hub for core banking. It enables payments and transactions between banks. So, as far as our customers are concerned, they spread globally, and these are some of the banks that have trusted us and are currently using our products. We are supporting 17 different time zones for 35 clients around the globe for more than 19 years, 20. And our team consists of more than 145 professionals. So just a few more things about our main product, Omnia. Our digital banking team consists of more than 100 professionals, business analysts, our quality assurance specialists. Our QA team consists of 17 associates. Our software engineers, front-end, back-end, mobile, both Android and iOS, we have native mobile applications. Our DevOps, project managers, and Scrum Masters. And here you may see some print screens of our Omnia platform for iOS and Android. And we at Advantage truly believe that a profitable company should always give back to society. That's why we're supporting meetups, conferences. We support youth employability by organizing our academies. Our most recent one, our iOS Academy, has just successfully completed. We organize blood donations. We're running for a good cause. We offer volunteer work and we recycle, of course. And of course, we enjoy our upsell life together. We invest on our people and we are doing our best to keep them happy. So we often organize events, both virtually and face-to-face. Here you can have an overview of our greatest moments together, gin tasting, our kickoff, paintball, traveling abroad, our basketball team, Pilates at the beach. And of course, if you want to learn more about how upsell life feels like, you may follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Glassdoor. So thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed today's presentation. Back to you, Maya.
Thank you very much, Panayota. Now we have Elias Liarakos from Intrasoft, and he will share something about his employer. Please welcome him. And Elias, the floor is yours.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hi, Maya, Petros, Nikos, George. I can see we're 40 people connected, so 40 very warm welcomes from myself to all of our participants today. My name is Elias Liarakos. I am a test team supervisor in Intrasoft International, and I will present you our team and our company. So, Intrasoft International is a leading European IT solution and services group with strong international presence and expertise. It has operational branches and offices in 13 countries, as you can see here in the slide. The company employs more than 2,200 highly skilled professionals, representing over 50 different nationalities and talking in more than 30 languages. Our market, more than 500 organizations in over 70 countries worldwide have chosen our services and solutions. Our main markets, as you can see, are institutions and agencies of the European Union, public sector, such as national government organizations, public agencies, etc., as well as the enterprise sector, such as financial institutions, telecommunication organizations, and banks. So let's now talk about our team, STSC. Our team is called STSC, Software Testing Services Center. It's an independent unit inside Intrasoft. We provide our services to Intrasoft delivery groups as per the request. This independence gives us the opportunity to have our own operational structure from the test director to the testers. So all members are managed and evaluated inside STSC. They have support from all levels, achieve expertise and specialization in their areas and in the testing profession. And of course, they are not project dependent. Currently, we have more than 90 professionals, which more than 40% of them have the ISTQB certification. We are currently providing testing services in more than 20 projects, covering almost any type of test activity. Some are depicted on the tree that you can see on the left of the screen. Let's talk now about the testing career paths that we have in Intrasoft International. The main career paths are two. the test analyst, and the test automation engineer path. A test analyst is responsible for organizing and monitoring the test activities of a project or a product, create test strategy, test cases, do some manual test activities. The test automation engineer is the one who codes, frameworks, test suites, scripts, and execute them. Both roles do performance testing activities as well. Finally, we have the hybrid role. This role is basically for test analysts with knowledge of automation or test analysts who want to be involved with automation activities. One of the most important things of our team mentality is the continuous learning and professional development of our people. We have two main pillars. Pillar one is the online courses, with all members having a professional Udemy account and LinkedIn Learning account as well. Pillar two, which is the most important, is the STSC internal trainings, community of practice, and group assignments. Internal trainings, COPs, and group assignments are as far as specialization. Through these actions, our members excel themselves in their work, bond even further, and most of all, they acquire new specialized skills on team leading, analysis methods, automation skills and frameworks, as well as in performance testing activities. Team capacity. As you can see in the slide, we have grown more than 50% at the last 1.5 years. From 60 people on January 2020, we are about 90 plus right now. As you can also see, for the June, the projection is to have more than 100 professionals. So this is a good opportunity for me to ask you all to visit our site, have a look on the open positions and apply. We are always looking forward to meeting new people through our interview process. I will now like to give you a brief image on our test automation activities and toolset, as the needs in this sector are increased by the hour, to say at least. So here's a slide with many logos on it. Automation is a crucial part of today's testing world and is something that is done exquisitely good in Intrasoft. We are delivering test suites and test products to our clients, so we are specialized in many frameworks, languages, and tools. We do everything inside the team, from setting up, coding, executing, to troubleshooting, reporting, and packaging. We do UI, API, microservices, performance tests. We are enthusiasts on new technologies, and this is something that is supported and encouraged also through the internal trainings, COPs, and group assignments, as I mentioned on the previous slides. We consider this thing our own little playground. Thank you very much, guys, for your attention. You can follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. Please also visit our openings in the Intrasoft website. And finally, you can find my LinkedIn contact details on the bottom. Thank you again. Enjoy Christian's presentation later on. Maya, thank you.
Thank you very much, Elias. And now it's time for Trusses Greece, our last but not least of the sponsors. And Athens Trusses will share something about Trusses Greece.
Yes.
Hello, Athens, and please speak up.
Okay. Thank you, Maya. Can all hear me? Let me share my screen.
Yeah, we can hear you.
You can see my screen, I presume.
Not yet.
No?
No, we can't see your screen yet.
Okay, let me then. Now?
Just a second, something is, yeah, we can see it already.
Okay, good, thank you. So, hello everyone, I'm Athens Trusses, glad to be here. Last time presented Trusses Greece in the meetup was again with a speaker from SOS Labs, Wim Sales, the 14th of February. We're all very thankful to Christian for being here with us today and have his keynote. Hopefully it will give us some hints on how we will transit from Protractor to WebDriver, which will be very useful. So, a few words about us. We are also part of a larger group, the NRB. You can see here a lot of subsidiaries, and we are currently extending in both public and private sector. Our activities spread in energy and financial fields and other sectors as well, which may be better depicted in the following slide. You will see here some of our clients, with a picture of our client portfolio. You also notice some quite famous in our times organizations like the European Medicine Agency, European Chemical Agency. Also a very nice new project about the permit pollution and reporting in UK with the PMRV and the ETS. A big account is also with Swift in the private sector. And on the right, you will see some of the certifications that we ask from our people to have, since we have to do with those very demanding customers, and the expectations are pretty high. So in order to build up those skills, we're using internal trainings, online resources we may find, and of course we have accounts on both PureSite and Pact. Few words on our technical domains. All QA members are part in each technical domain. This involves, of course, sorry, the mandatory manual testing, and mostly end-to-end automation testing, API contract testing in some cases, performance and stress tests if this is needed. And in some cases, you will see that for the BI and data analytics and data warehousing, we even do some data testing there. All our testers are form a community of practice. We like to exchange and promote ideas based on the new technologies that we use. And you will see my next slide. We try to follow up the new technologies. So if a new technology emerges, you might see it here in the future. The idea is to share all technologies we're using currently on our projects and how we benefit from it. Each project uses its own. So if a tester moves internally, I can tell you that he won't be bored, because he will see new stuff and how these are implemented in its project. So depending on the customer, we have something like, let's say, of the self solution tailored to his needs. It's time. So you might see automation projects or build even custom frameworks in robot, even robot with Cucumber, even if this is extravagant for me. Selenium WebDriver with Java, and with the addition of Cucumber also. And of course, one of the reasons we are here today, it's this red Circova style for the social drinkers, Protractor, which is the testing framework, of course, for Angular, and its support soon comes to an end. So really interesting on today's presentation. Now, okay, some key figures for Trusses Greece. You will notice the upwards trajectory in resources. We are actually right now about, including the contractors, 220 engineers, developers, testers, analysts, program managers, and plus all the team assistant recruitment. We are above 250 right now. The number, of course, of the onboarding, it's much larger because we also had some attrition. We managed, though, during COVID time to successfully onboard, as I said, more than 50 people, which played an important factor to the success of our projects. And you can easily understand that sometimes this is hard, especially because we were remote, but we were managed to do it successfully, as I said. Okay, so working in Trusses during the pandemic was a little bit hard. Even if we were working remotely, we had an excellent cooperation between us, something we promote, ensure delivery to our customers. So in order to achieve that, we had to adjust, as I believe everyone, each one of you, to the new reality by working fully remotely. And from our homes, with our beloved kids, and all the difficulties we had to experience. So this is depicted very well, I believe, to the following slide. It was a whole new experience. But yet again, we made it through with a new vaccination program and all the conspiracy theories that brought, all this very nice a new 5G reception and help us get closer together. So to come to an end, yes, you guess right, we're hiring, especially for the Swift customer, which is very demanding right now. We're searching for senior test automation engineers. We're also looking for developers, if you know someone, DevOps. You can find more in the link shown here. And really looking forward to hearing from all of you and see the presentation. So thank you very much for watching us. Maya,
Thank you very much, Ephemios. Okay, guys, so the moment has arrived and it's time for our main guest today, Christian Bromann. Christian is the lead engineer at the DevTools team at SOS Labs in Berlin. And he's passionate about automation beyond the WebDriver protocol, as well as about open source. So these all led him to becoming the maintainer of WebDriverIO. And today he will share with us his story, his experience about transition from Protractor to WebDriverIO. Christian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maya. And thank you particularly the whole team at the Ministry of Testing in Athens for inviting me. I think it's the first time that I'm speaking at Ministry of Testing. It's an honor and a pleasure to be part of this community. Just before I start, can you all see my screen?
Awesome. Yes, we can.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the talk, everyone. Let the code write itself. How a code mod helps you to transition from Protractor to WebDriverIO. In the next 30 minutes or so, I would like to speak a little bit about the dynamics within open source that sometimes forces us to migrate code, and how particularly a code mod can be a very successful and useful approach to achieve such a migration successfully. Due to the recent events, we will, of course, look into how this works on a concrete example, which means that we look into in an actual project and see how we can migrate that from Protractor to WebDriverIO. Before I start, let me introduce myself. I'm Christian. I'm working in the open source program office at SOS Labs. My responsibilities there is to oversee how SOS Labs is consuming as well as distributing open source that is critical to our company's vision. This gives me the chance to do a lot of interesting things. Part of that is also working on a framework that is called WebDriverIO, now almost full time. I've been always interested and a big fan of open source work in general. And I find the dynamics around those projects very interesting, which also made me, become part of the JS Foundation, which made me become curious about how standards are being developed at the W3C. I open sourced many projects myself. I contributed to ones, some were smaller and some were bigger open source projects. But what does it actually mean when we say something like we contributed to a big open source project? Does it mean that that project has a lot of commits or contributors or both? To get a better understanding about the project, we can start categorizing them into certain types, starting with the solo type, which is a type of project that almost 80 to 90% of all open source projects are, right? Where we have one, maybe two developers responsible for maintaining it. Then we have a monarchist type of project where all decisions are made by a project lead and a number of small lieutenants, we call them. And lastly, there's community projects like WebDriverIO, for instance, or like Selenium, where a clear governance structures how collaborators into different technical leadership teams or project leadership teams, and where all decisions are made democratically at all times. Now, when a project reaches a certain level of impact, we usually start then categorizing into these categories because they automatically become a bit larger than just a community project. We categorize them between corporate and foundational projects then. A corporate project, great example is Protractor here, is a project where the roadmap of these tools are mostly dictated by the corporation behind them. And while there are some corporate projects that are interested in a collaborative roadmap discussion, at the end of the day, the company behind the project is the driving engineering entity, and therefore has always the last word to say. And then we have the foundational projects. You can think about GraphQL or Node.js, where the complete decision-making is formalized and where consensus is found by a set of diverse people affiliated to different companies. Now, with Protractor, we now see a great example where when a company is no longer interested in continuing investing in that specific project. This company, Google, who was a driving entity here, has decided to no longer invest into the project anymore. And again, this happened now with Protractor. The Angular team has been maintaining the project since 2013 and bundled it as a end-to-end testing solution for Angular application. It has been very successful and for many years, one of the most used end-to-end projects in the JavaScript ecosystem. Eventually, I think it started 2-3 years ago, the contributions of the Angular team decreased until they have now announced that they will end the development of the project. The main reasons here is that with Selenium 4, which will hopefully be released within the next month, Selenium 4 will get rid of the control flow, which if Protractor would adopt that, it means that a lot of tests would break for people running Protractor. In addition to that, to make the code base more compatible with the latest JavaScript standards, this would also require major technical updates, which would also result in additional breaking changes for users. Given these circumstances and the fact that a lot of other JavaScript testing libraries have evolved in the meantime, they made the decision to stop developing the framework, and I think until 2022. With that, the options for current users are either to switch to a community-driven Protractor Lite solution, as many folks have requested in this RFC that you see there, or prior this RFC, the Angular team actually reached out to a lot of testing framework maintainers like me, maintaining WebDriverIO, and have asked to collaborate on a migration path to a different framework. So I was happy that they reached out and looked into how this can be automated as much as possible. And given that Protractor and WebDriverIO are conceptually the same, I thought this would be actually very feasible using a tool tools like codemods. So what is a codemod? Codemod, short for code modifications, can refer to manual or tool-assisted automated code changes, and usually on large code bases, right? The term was first introduced by engineers at Facebook that needed to maintain their large front-end code base in a much more efficient way and effective way. I think I first stumbled upon codemods by a talk from Christoph Nakazawa, who is engineering manager there and also maintainer of the Jest framework. He mentioned that at Facebook, they have over 10,000 of JavaScript modules. And they use codemods extensively to keep their code base in a good shape and allow engineers to move fast, even with breaking changes. And in the JavaScript ecosystem, we see a lot of things changing and new patterns being introduced all the time. So it is always easy to introduce a new interface, but it's always hard to go back and clean up all deprecated code. In addition to that, with browsers adding more and more capabilities and frameworks gaining more and more new features, there needs to be a way to code with large code changes in a more automated fashion. And there have been many tools that allow you already to do that. There are two types of code mods. Some of them operate or are using regular expressions. I don't want to get into them because writing a good regular expression is a challenge by itself. But most interestingly, I found code mods that were operating on the AST, the so-called abstract syntax tree. For folks who don't know what an AST is, an AST, or again, abstract syntax tree, is a tree representation of an abstract syntactic structure of source code written in a programming language. What does it mean? So rather than doing those code changes on the source code itself, looking at line by line, we transform the source code into tree objects. And this is great because it helps us to traverse more easier through the code and apply the code change to only the parts that we are interested in rather than looking at the whole file. An AST could look like this. Let's say we have a JavaScript file with one line of code that has this kind of console log statement. So if we want to transform this source code now into an AST, we would start defining the whole thing as a program. But then we look at the first statement, which is a call expression. A call expression is usually anything that is a function that you call. A call expression always has a callee and some arguments. Here, the callee is a member expression, which contains an object, which is the identifier console, and a property, which is an identifier called log. And then its arguments is a literal, a string with hello German testing days. Now a little bit more advanced feature, looking at now a Protractor example, we have an element query here. So this whole thing in itself is a variable declaration from kind const. You could have a kind bar or a kind let as well. And that variable declaration has an assignment expression with an operator equals. And that itself has an element identifier on the left side of the operator. And on the right side of the operator, again, a call expression that has a callee, which is an identifier element, its arguments, which is a member expression by partial button text, and its arguments, the save keyword. So how can we use that? But before we dive too much into the code mod stuff, let's recap a little bit why you would even start considering migrating things to WebDriverIO, right? At the end of the day, this is just me as a project maintainer giving folks that have been using Protractor an offer to switch to this tool more easily. As a maintainer of the WebDriverIO framework, I don't really want to get involved into discussions about what's the best tools, what's the best tool out there. I think this is really depending on every team that is out there, any team's requirements and their preferences. Here, for this particular example, I can recommend you all to go to the RFC that I showed before on the Protractor repository and look into what people have mentioned, why they have chosen for a particular framework. I think there's even a big pro and contra list that you can adopt and look into that can help you make the decision correct for your team. And maybe eventually, I think there are some discussions about having some people maintain a fork of Protractor to keep folks continuing using it because it has been very popular in the past. Generally, I think it's always a good idea to take some time and evaluate two or three different frameworks and see which works the best for your team. If I could pick a couple of reasons why you should choose WebDriverIO, I would mention the following ones. First, I would say WebDriverIO is kind of really easy to set up. It's not only just an automation tool like Selenium, it's a whole framework that comes with a lot of packages in addition to its core package. And in order to get everything set up smoothly, there's a configuration wizard that walks you through a couple of questions, and you get up your framework set up immediately with everything necessary. And I have a demo for that in a second. Again, it's not just a library, it's a whole framework. So it comes with a variety of plugins like services or reporters that help you to integrate into other platforms such as Source Labs, Apply Tools, and others to work with these platforms without having to write code, and rather just configure what you want to do on these platforms. One example of another kind of integration and plugin is the so-called WDIO DevTools service, which provides a Google Lighthouse integration that provides you ability to run performance tests on your application or check if your PWA application has all the necessary factors to be served for your mobile users. The project is completely written in TypeScript, so if you like to write things in TypeScript, it comes with a great typing support. I think one of the biggest advantages I feel like is its big community. There are a lot of folks that have created learning materials around WebDriverIO on YouTube, on Coursera, or whatever platform exists out there that helps you to get up to speed with the framework easy. And on top of that, there's a community channel on Gitter that allows you to just chime in every day and ask questions to see and get help from community members. It's not only community members that hang out there, but also we maintainer, we lure on any question and will answer when possible. And lastly, the project is part of the OpenJS Foundation, alongside projects such as Node.js, Webpack, AMP, or Mocha. And that not only ensures that the project WebDriverIO is being developed with a sustainable governance and community, it also helps to increase the collaboration between other projects of the foundation like Node.js or Mocha. So, for example, if I need a feature in Mocha or I have a bug fix, a bug discovered in Mocha, I can immediately go to the maintainers there and be like, hey, I found this. Can you quickly help me to fix it? Again, those are all just recommendations, and I feel like everyone that wants to migrate off Protractor needs to make a decision based on their team's requirements. And again, it always makes sense to test 2 or 3 frameworks that exist out there to see which fulfill the requirements the best possible. Now, when you decide to eventually move to or migrate to WebDriverIO, that's awesome. Welcome to the community. We have been working hard over the last 4 weeks to provide this code mod to make this as automated as possible. I've been using a tool called JS CodeShift, which is a tool and a package that was developed by engineers at Facebook to really make this tool really powerful and to provide a code mod that is operating on the IST rather than on the source code directly. Now, when we look at Protractor code and compare it to how WebDriverIO test code looks like, the biggest difference is usually the way locators work, right? Protractor here is using the Selenium API as it is based on Selenium and provides some Angular-specific locator strategies that don't exist in WebDriverIO. So might want to ask, what's going to happen with all these locators? So let's look into how such a code mod can, do the transition into a WebDriverIO source code. Again, on the left side, you see the code mod example that you don't need to care if this is how this code mod is being written in terms of insights. And on the right side, you see the transition of or the example of the code snippet that I want to transform. So for this to work, we need to fetch all function calls, so call expressions that exist in the file. But we are only interested in the ones that have a callee with an identifier named element. And we want to filter all these calls for this example to only look at the ones that have an argument that is a member expression with the object by and the property CSS, or any kind of property here in this case, and a certain argument for that. And then we replace this kind of statement, wherever it is in the source code, with a call expression that has this time an identifier $, because the $sign command is a global variable available in WebDriverIO that is responsible for fetching elements. And then we pass in the argument into a utility function that will then make sure that all the by.css or by.xpath is formatted into the correct WebDriverIO selector. At the end of this, this kind of like works fairly well for almost all selector strategies that exist in Protractor. You see that many of them are pretty much just replaced by a CSS selector. And again, that works pretty smoothly. There has been some issues that I found that by button text actually finds elements that are also from type input with a value of, for instance, submit, like a submit button is also being fetched by button text. This is currently not possible with the current transformation, but this is where the things that where some manual work is required to be done. Another concern many Protractor users might have is what about all these wait for Angular features, right? So Protractor has some specific automatic waits that ensures that applications, for instance, are loaded properly, that the network is idle, and all those things. So I had a couple of calls with the developers from the Angular team, and they mentioned to me that all these features are not really usable for today's modern Angular applications. And even for older applications, the automatic wait capabilities that WebDriverIO comes with would also capture that. So in WebDriverIO, if you fetch or query an element and it's not there at the time that when you query it, it will refetch it once you interact with it, like clicking or get the text of that element. So there are some automatic waits in WebDriverIO as well. But for those kind of features that are in your test suite, for instance, a browser.waitForAngular enabled, we don't need them anymore when we migrate to WebDriverIO. So how get we rid of those? So we can look into all the expression statements that have a member expression with the identifier browser and a property like the function name that contains all the a list of all commands that we want to get rid of. There's not only wait for Angular enabled. I think there's a bunch of other things that are not really relevant in the WebDriverIO world. We can just get rid of them. And so at the end, we just call the remove command, and this expression statement will be removed from your source code when it being reprinted. So these are two examples that are more easier to demonstrate in this case, but there's a lot of more this codemod can do, which I would like to show you. But before, let me show you what I did on which page I spent the last 2 weeks on, which is this AST Explorer, which is also developed by engineers at Facebook, where you can see how this code mod or JS code shift in general works. You have an example code over here on the top left, and you see the AST that is being created out of it. And then you can parse through it and see all the identifiers, and can go into the array expression, and you see this array contains 3 literals, and you get a sense of how the source code looks like. But then what also cool is you can enable the transform, and there's not only JS code shift as a tool. You probably all have heard about Babel. Babel has its own transformation library to transform your source code using Babel. There's one for TypeScript that is used by the TypeScript project. There's one by TS Lind. And they all provide different interfaces to transform code, source code based on the AST. So if we see this example for JS CodeShift, we see it's the same principle I just showed. We, for instance, for this example, we look into the source and then we try to find all identifiers. And we replace them by reverse their names. So we split the name and then we reverse them. And now we see that this source code is immediately written in a weird way. We can play around with that and have some, you can explore how the IST works and how you can maybe even implement your own code mod when you do a migration of one of your automation frameworks or projects in the future. But let me actually go into the demo and show you how this code mod works in real life. So I will stop sharing my screen for a second and we'll switch to my IDE right here. So I looked into, I tried to find an example project for Protractor, and I found this one on the internet. It uses page objects, so I thought it would be like a nice general way of how most of the people are writing their test frameworks. While we're installing the dependencies, we can look into how this project looks like. We have the tests that are written using the page objects, and essentially it goes on a page and does some interactions for it. Whatever it does, it's not really important. Then we have a page object here that extends the base page. And we see that there are a bunch of Protractor calls in here. Some here even use already the $sign command, which we don't even need to modify. We have some methods for it and a base page that is using the Protractor expected conditions, which we need to transform. For that, a community member has written a drop-in replacement. So we can also automatically transform that. And I hope that, give me a second to drink something. It gives NPM some time to download things. So, and I want to, once this is installed, we can just run Protractor to see that, we are working based off a working example. So we want to have we want to start with a passing Protractor test and want to finish with a passing WebDriverIO test. And there are many ways how you can, conduct this migration. I usually recommend to not do everything at once and rather start migrating file by file. And with the code mod, you can maybe have take half an hour every day to migrate one file at a time, so that you eventually reach the point where you have migrated all files. Because if you start migrating all files at once, which the code mod can technically do, you see a lot of problems and you don't know where they come from, and it would just be probably a mess. So rather than doing that, it's recommended to have both frameworks running in your project at the same time and slowly migrate from one to the other. So we're almost done. Perfect. So we now run this project, and for demo purposes, we just will focus on the friend spec as the one that we're going to migrate. So let me run this. This will spin up a Chrome browser, and we'll do an interaction on this demo page. There's nothing really much to see. It's just for you that you see that we have a successful running Protractor test. So what we're going to do now is we install the WebDriverIO codemod together with JS CodeShift, which is the tool that uses our codemod to transform the files. And again, the JS CodeShift is here the framework, and the WebDriverIO codemod contains all the code mods that you can use to transform any kind of WebDriverIO code. So there's right now we have a code mod for migrate from Protractor to WebDriverIO. Based on the success of this code mod, we have started writing a code mod to help users migrate from older major version to newer major versions, so that you always are easy to upgrade your framework versions and can use the latest and greatest from the framework. So that hopefully takes not so long. That's perfect. Okay, so 1 second. Great. So now we can use this to call JS CodeShift, and we use as a transform argument our Protractor code mod. Again, there would be other code mods available for other use cases in the future. And again, we want to focus on the friends spec. So we want to only transform the friend spec, the base page, and the friend page. So let's do that. This will go faster. So this will spin up 3 workers and will transform everything in parallel. So it's very efficient if you want to run it on a larger code base. We're getting some errors here, and those errors are intended because a lot of things that live in Protractor cannot just be transformed to WebDriverIO because there's just no translation. Here's where the code mod helps you to identify where some manual work is required. So in this case, we don't have a column translator, like we don't have a way to query for specific columns. So we would need to find where this .names is being used and replace this with something better. In this case, this .names is not even be used anywhere, and we can just get rid of it. This was easy. And then we have another example where this framework extends the element finder with getWidth. Again, a quick look on that, we see that this is used nowhere, so we can also get rid of that. The good part about migration is, I mean, they will require some work on your side, but they help you also to get rid of some, on some code that you don't need anymore. So running this again, it will now successfully run it on those 2 files. We can actually run it as many times we need to have it. Yeah, so now we have everything migrated, and let's just look what has changed. We see that the code mod dependency has been added. You don't need that for your project because you only need to have the code mod as long as you transform the code. But then you see immediately for this wait example, the code mod has renamed it to wait until, and it has transformed the arguments of this command into the proper structure. The same for the get call. Here we use, instead of get, the command is named URL. Again, the Protractor expected condition API is a drop-in replacement, can be replaced with the WebDriverIO wait for package. You see that here. Some other more strict, like this send keys action, just simplify it to browser.keys. And some other renaming. Then something interesting, if you use page object in particular, the code mod moves all the elements that your query in your constructor into a getter, which is the WebDriver way of writing these element queries, because you only want to really make the WebDriver call or the element query when you actually access this property of the page object. So doing it here would mean that when you initiate the page object, it makes a ton of element queries, which is not a good way of doing this thing. And then at the end of the day, we see even some await cleanups because the code mod will detect, oh, hey, this one is using async await, so it will wrap your commands into proper async await, and eventually we will have a code mod that can allow you to switch between synchronous execution versus an asynchronous execution. Again, this whole thing will not always be fully automatic. It's just like to 95%. For instance, in this case, where we want to access the length of, like we want to figure out how many elements we have been queried using friendpage.rows element. And here the code mod doesn't know that there is a friend page and that .rows is an element query. So it immediately thinks there's no promise behind it. So here we need to do some manual work. So going in here, we need to just wrap this into everywhere where length is being used. We need to wrap this into parentheses so that the promise of this element property is first resolved, and then you access the property length. We actually also have this for the base page here, where at the friends page here, where we also have to fix a little bit in terms of async await execution. We might fix that in the future, and we'll improve the code mod further on. But so far, this looks good. 2 manual changes needed. And we can now go and implement our WebDriverIO framework. For that, we add WDIO/CLI, which is the entry point for you to use these WDIO CLI capabilities. So let's have it being installed there. And then again, instead of getting rid of the Protractor configuration and replace everything, we do migration step by step. That means that we just look into how the Protractor configuration looks like, and we create a WebDriverIO configuration based on those kind of information. So you will see in a second how this will work out in a moment. What else I could go into? So yeah, we can do some further optimization here, for instance. This is also something that the code mod could technically do, but here we just do it ourselves. Wait for, we require it at the bottom, so we don't need to require it all over again. Those are some minor cleanups. And we're already working with a lot of companies, at least I do that at the Source Lab side, to speak with customers there to help them migrate from Protractor to WebDriverIO, and we find a lot of use cases where we can improve the code mod and make this automation even more automated. So let's wait a second. Almost there. You can all already think about questions that I can answer after the talk. I'm happy to go through all of them. Second. Yay. So now we can adapt or create our new WebDriverIO config. Again, to call the WDIO CLI, you just call npx, which gives you directly access to all the local installed binaries. And the WDIO CLI tool will see, okay, there's no configuration file yet. So I can make this a little bit bigger. okay, this person has no configuration file, so do you want to create one? Yes, we want to do that. So the first question is, where is your automation backend located? I want to run this on my local machine. Now, which framework do we want to use? By default, WebDriverIO supports Mocker, Jasmine, and Cucumber. And we see here that Protractor and most of the Protractor frameworks are using Jasmine. However, I usually recommend Mocker as a framework because it has better retry capabilities. And therefore, I here will just switch to Mocker, which will be essentially the same. In this case, we see in the config that this project is using an old version of Babel. So in this case, I let WebDriverIO set up Babel automatically. My tests are located here. So I copy paste this in. And again, we want to focus on the friend spec. So just taking this one out. We don't want to auto-generate files because we have them already. We see that a spec reporter is being used. So we just select the spec reporter out of the WebDriverIO ecosystem. Since Chrome is being used, we can add Chrome driver. And our base URL is also the one that we see in our Protractor config here. And so now, I hope that doesn't take too long, but WebDriverIO, the CLI tool, will automatically install all necessary packages. You see that some of them are native WebDriverIO packages that are maintained by the WebDriverIO team. We have also packages that are developed by community members. And in addition to that, there's the Babel package that we need to transform Babel. And we have the Chrome driver package to start Chrome driver. Also, what we see now is that we have a Babel config automatically generated from the WebDriverIO CLI, which uses the preset env, which is also being installed to just transpile the code down to Node.js 14, which is the version I'm currently using. And then hopefully this will be installed soon. And again, if you run WebDriverIO and look into the CLI options, you will see that there's a lot of options in terms of reporters and in terms of services to integrate and create your WebDriverIO framework the way you like it. Because again, every team has different desires and requirements, and with WebDriverIO, it's like a plug and play system that you can put everything together. So now we also see that the WDIO config is created. So similar to the Protractor one, this is the one maintained by the WebDriverIO framework. And this is now all we need to run our tests. So let's do that. Again, we call npx WDIO. Now it detects a config file and it will just run that. It starts Chrome driver automatically. And interestingly enough, there is an error. Cannot find npm wait for. Good point. Since I'm requiring it, I also need to install it. There's currently no feature that the codemod installs it for you, but I will make a note to also add that. I hope this will be quick. Perfect. So we rerun this again. npx WDIO, it detects the config file and runs our and we'll run our little spec file. So now we see something is repeating here. And this is the WebDriverIO wait capabilities. So apparently there was an element not visible or existing. And again, can call click on element with selector button plus add. As you remember, this is what I mentioned with the one selector that we currently struggle with. So we go into the area where this could not be found. So we just look for button plus add. And we found it here. And I happen to know that this is an input which has the value of plus add. And this is where we have to do some manual work. But overall, if we repeat this, it hopefully should now pass. We start it again. We run Chrome. And after all, we have passing tests with all the 5 tests that the Protractor was running now run in WebDriverIO. Let me switch just real quick back to my slides. Why not? Yeah, this was my last slide and the last demo. Thank you all so much for joining this meetup and joining this session. I hope you know, when you use Protractor, you make a conscious decision about which framework you choose to. You know, all the frameworks that exist in our current ecosystem do a fantastic work. You should always see them that some from the technical part of view, you know, have some limitations versus the other. So you should see what requirements your team has and, you know, make a conscious decision which framework you want to migrate to. With that said, thank you all for joining, and let's open up the round for questions.
Thank you very much, Christian, for your presentation. That was very inspiring, very interesting. I'm sure that especially from those of us who already use Protractor or WebDriverIO. I personally don't, but I'm closer than ever. Before we move to questions, you said that you're open to answer all of them. Let's have a look at the poll that started during your presentation. The question was, what is your favorite automation tool? And we had a few candidates for the winner, the leader. And to no surprise, Selenium got 65%. Second place is for Protractor. And then ex aequo, we have Cypress and WebDriverIO. So even if we add 13 to 9, it's 22. So there's hope for WebDriverIO if people move from Protractor to it, to be closer, to be the second. Of course, I'm always curious about Selenium, still remembering from 2 years ago that even Simon Stewart admitted during our meetup here in Athens that he didn't use it himself. Okay, so let's move on to questions.